Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Recently, Sargon of Akkad posted a tweet giving what might be called his 5 pillars of atheism. There is no God, there is no prophet, there is no afterlife, there is no salvation, and there is no excuse. So actually, I'm going to refer to these as background. The Nicene Creed, the Creed of Christians, was named for the council that took place in the city of Nicaea. And since, according to Wikipedia, Sargon lives in Swindon, I'll call this the Swindonian Creed going forward. So, now, the first 4 of these are pretty self-explanatory, and it would be tempting to do the whole, but where's your evidence thing. But you know what? I actually have a lot of respect for people who have a position, who have, the backbone to actually look at the world and come to some sort of conclusion and actually hold that. Obviously he's wrong about these, but at the same time, while, he's not correct about them, that's a big, long argument. It's extremely involved. If you're curious, I recommend my video about why I have hope in my heart, because not the first part, but the second part. I recommend, if you're interested in Christianity, I name several books in there in order to actually learn about why is it true. So, several books is a starting point. It's a big, long, complicated thing in order to really actually properly tackle these things. So that's not the purpose of this. It's that 5th one, actually, that I want to focus on. But just to be clear about, the first 4, I just want to say, because I respect people who actually have positions, that, if I had a hat, it would be off to Mr. of Akkad, that, as one vertebrate to another, I salute you. So about the 5th one. Now, the problem is that this was on Twitter, and Twitter is a very low-context environment. So it's hard to know exactly what he means. No excuse for what? To whom? I'm going to assume, there's a lot of possibilities here. And I mean, a lot of real possibilities, as well as, less likely but not impossible ones. I'm going to assume that he means no excuse for evil acts. He could mean no excuse for not trying harder to be good, no excuse for not making the world a better place, no excuse for believing in a God, prophet, afterlife, and salvation, no excuse for religious toleration, no excuse for keeping the unfit alive. He could mean any number of things. I'm going to assume that he means that there's no excuse for evil acts. So what I'm going to say here will be about that, and will still apply whether or not that's what he means. It's just, if that's not what he means and he meant something else, then my comments will be about that topic and not about the Swindonian Creed. So here's the thing about no excuse for evil acts. Why would you need one? Here's the thing. If God is dead, all things are permitted. This is well recognized within philosophy. And the funny thing about this is, despite the fact that I'm sure if there are any atheists watching this, I've already triggered many of them. But if you just pay attention to what atheists themselves say, often practically in the same breath, they will tell you that morality is just a preference. It has changed completely from culture to culture and over time. It's all incredibly local and just what you've been taught and your own preferences. I never understood why it is that I'm the only one who actually listens to what atheists say. You'd think they would too, at least a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, it's just, if there is no God above us to whom we all stand in the same relationship, then we just have to duke it out amongst ourselves. And there's a great, Thucydides dramatized the discussion between the Athenians and the Melians prior to Athens sacking Melius. This is a long time ago. And in it, the Melians had appealed to the Athenians, saying that if the Melius was a neutral city in the Athenian War and the Peloponnesian Wars. And they were appealing to Athens that to sack a neutral city would be disgraceful. And, it'd be just wrong. And the Athenians replied, in Thucydides' dramatization, right, as the world goes, is only in question between equals in power, while the strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. This is actually remarkably close to. I don't know how many of you ever watched or read the Evil Overlord. Top 100 things I would do if I were evil overlord. It was an email forward many years ago. There's a website. I think it's still in existence, and it's up to about 200 something things. And number 102 was really I loved it. It's not my favorite, but I really loved it, which was I will not waste time making the hero's death look like an accident. My friends won't care, and my enemies won't believe it anyway. And both of these sort of get to that same sort of principle, that if there is no higher authority to which we can both appeal, if it's just us as equals, then it's whatever we can force each other to. In some cases, whatever we can persuade each other to. Although, if you study history, persuasion doesn't work very well in practice. And the reason why you always fall back to might makes right if there is no God, is very simply because in order to compel somebody else to do something, you must appeal to something that stands outside of us. That is to say, just in order to interact, there must be some intermediary through which we interact. If God exists, it is possible to have principles that we both are supposed to conform to, and therefore it is possible to point out to somebody that he is not conforming to the principles that he himself must conform to as one of those creatures. If that doesn't exist, the only thing you are left with is that physics applies to all of us. Physics forms that sort of backdrop, in which we all exist and which we all must recognize. And that is to say, roughly speaking, that if you shoot somebody in the face, he will die. Physics applies in that regard. If you drop a 500-pound bomb on somebody, he'll be blown up. And that works. And that's real and final. And that's outside of both of us. No matter how much he disbelieves in that 500-pound bomb, he's gone. No matter how much, and sort of more relevantly, no matter how much he wants to survive that 500-pound bomb, he'll still be blown up. So, this is sort of the fundamental thing. If God exists, it is possible to use reason to persuade people. It doesn't always work, of course, because we live in a fallen world and people are sinful. But it works some of the time. If there is no God, there is no reason to which to appeal. There is no normative human nature that defines right from wrong in a universal sense. There's just, we're all here, we're doing whatever we can get by doing. You can try to convince somebody to do something convenient for you if you can figure out some way that it's, doing what you want is really in their best interests. But almost all the time that doesn't work because most people tend to have a fairly good sense of what's in their best interests. And so if they don't already think it's in their best interest, it's very unlikely you'll be able to persuade them that, in fact, doing what you want is. So there's one other part to this, too, when you consider reasonableness and so on. And that is to say, most atheists that I know do not have a very high opinion of humanity if you're not asking them of it in basically those terms. Because, consider things like Kim Kardashian is a celebrity, and more people like watching football than like being involved in politics. Now, what is the explanation I will generally hear from atheists about this? That, well, people are stupid. And in one sense, fair enough. But consider that for a moment. If you want everybody to act on their own, making their own moral decisions without any sort of influence from others. You want these idiots, these people that you consider idiots, in order to be on their own, and you want these people to make all their own decisions. That really sound like it's going to work out well. And just to make it really, really concrete, and why kind of the predictable tends to happen, is that if people like football more than politics, what do you think they'll do when somebody comes and offers to take the work of the politics, and let them just watch the football? Do you think they're going to say no? And, just to make that even more concrete, lots of people won't go to church on Sundays in order to go watch or play football. Do you think that if you talk them out of going to church on Sunday, they're going to want to go watch and play football less, and they're definitely going to want to get involved in politics, doing everything through rational evaluation? Really? The point being, if there is no God, then there doesn't need to be any excuse. So it's kind of irrelevant whether or not there is one. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at. Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Recently, Sargon of Akkad posted a tweet giving what might be called his 5 pillars of atheism. There is no God, there is no prophet, there is no afterlife, there is no salvation, and there is no excuse. So actually, I'm going to refer to these as background. The Nicene Creed, the Creed of Christians, was named for the council that took place in the city of Nicaea. And since, according to Wikipedia, Sargon lives in Swindon, I'll call this the Swindonian Creed going forward. So, now, the first 4 of these are pretty self-explanatory, and it would be tempting to do the whole, but where's your evidence thing. But you know what? I actually have a lot of respect for people who have a position, who have, the backbone to actually